In honor of Brandon Gadula, who is on vacation for this week and not on the podcast, it is my obligation to begin this podcast with a good old Morikawa Bunga. Colin Morikawa, a major champion once again. And of course, Morikawa was Brandon's win pick on the podcast for it last week. So potentially not an actual vacation and more so just victory lapping around his backyard. I assume with his cats in tow. So Brandon, either way, not here for this week to celebrate the Morikawa victory, but still plenty to discuss for the 3M Open. Dustin Johnson, the massive betting favorite and the highest salary guy on FanDuel for this week, but also don't think it's a flawless profile. So we'll break that down, break down the thoughts on DJ, how to handle him, who else to target, and more to get you set for this week's event. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down the 3M Open from a PGA DFS perspective and get you set for this week's event. Of course, with no Brandon for this week, there is no PGA Q&A this week. We'll be back next week. He'll be breaking down his thoughts on that event. So we will be talking MLB DFS still at 4 p.m. today. So make sure you check out the numberFire/FanDuel, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages, but also hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get each podcast as it goes up. The 3M Open is at TPC Twin Cities. So Brandon appropriately leaves me this week so I can talk about my motherland, the great state of Minnesota. It's up in Blaine. I'm from the southern part of the state, so not a lot of familiarity there, but either way, we can always slobber over the motherland here. TPC Twin Cities, 7,431 yards, and is a par 71. There are 156 golfers in the field for this week. The top 65 plus ties will make the cut after the first two rounds, which means finding cut makers will be tough this week. We do need to prioritize that for sure to get a 6 out of 6 lineup. This is the third time they've been to TPC Twin Cities, so just 2 years of course history to look at. And the big takeaway, I think, for me in looking at those events, you got to go low. Matthew Wolff won at 21 under back in 2019. Two other guys were 20 under in that event. Michael Thompson won at 19 under last year. There were 11 total golfers who were at least 16 under in that field. So if you want to compete this week, you gotta get birdies. And weirdly, that doesn't necessarily mean just distance. It is a longer course, 7.431, but you can get there via accuracy. I know with Matthew Wolff and Bryson DeChambeau finishing top 2 back in 2019, it may seem like we need a distance. And it is a longer course, but last year, 5 of the top 6 finishers were outside the top 100 in driving distance for the full PGA Tour season. But only one of the top 6 is outside the top 78 in good drive rate. Data Golf's numbers also say that accuracy does matter here. And it makes sense as there's a lot of water appropriate for the land of 10,000 lakes, actually closer to 21,000 if you got the man-made lakes. But hey, who's counting? So to me, I do think we should go with good drives gained this week as the off the tee stat. I looked at Brandon's course primer over a numberFire. He says strokes gained off the tee. So to me, either way, we're not looking strictly distance, strictly accuracy. I think good drives gained or strokes gained off the tee, the way to play things for this week in terms of the off the tee stat. But, it might make us undervalue guys like Wolff and DeChambeau, hypothetically in previous fields who can bomb it off the tee and finish at the top of the leaderboard. But hopefully to offset that, I will put birdies or better gained in there. So if we look at good drives gained, guys who get birdies, that should be allowing us to not overlook guys like hypothetically a Wolff or a DeChambeau for this year's event. The putting numbers will be bent grass for this week, but I think the true key stat, and this is kind of burying the lead, but the true key stat this week is approach. Data Golf has numbers that show what percentage of the scoring is explained by each metric. And here, strokes gained approach explains 44% of the scoring. That's up from 35% for the average PGA Tour event. So approach is king for this event. It's king every week, but I think it's especially king this week. So we want approach play above all else. Then we want guys who can put it where they need to via good drives gained and birdie makers. Then we'll sprinkle in some bent grass putting as well. It does seem like short game matters a bit less this week than usual, but either way, you don't want to overlook putting all that much, and that should give us a good idea of who will fare well for this week. So for me, my 4 key stats are good drives gained, approach, birdies are better gained, and then bent grass putting over the past 100 rounds if you have it via Fantasy National. We'll talk about who has done well across the past 2 years here in just 1 second. But first, we are on to game number 6. And Taco Bell, the comeback bonus is still in play, introducing the FanDuel Sportsbook and Taco Bell NBA Finals comeback bonus. The terms are simple. All you have to do is head to FanDuel Sportsbook before tip-off and place a $25+ pre-live money line bet on either team to win. If the team you bet on overcomes a halftime deficit to win, you will be eligible to receive a $10 bonus in FanDuel site credit. You'll win your bets and you'll earn that bonus. Now that's more ways to win thanks to our friends at Taco Bell. Users must opt in to the promo in order to be eligible for the bonus payout. Eligible every NBA Finals game until the bonus hits. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Bonus issued as a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max bonus $10. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line, 1-800-889-979. Or in West Virginia, visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's take a look, as I said before, at the 2 events here at TPC Twin Cities and who has done well here in the past in the course history section. And the big headliner there is Matthew Wolff. He won here back in 2019, back when he was a rookie. And he followed that up with a 12th place finish last year. He was awesome with his approach play in both those events. Wolff gained 9.5 strokes back in 2019 and 3.7 last year. He didn't really feast off the tee in either of those, but he was just so good elsewhere that it didn't really matter. So the question with Wolff is not about course history, not about course fit. It is about form. He has played 3 events since his long hiatus. He played well at the US Open, then he imploded at the Travelers. He gained 3.9 tee to green in 2 rounds at the Rocket Mortgage, but also lost 4.3 strokes putting. So there is no safety here. He could withdraw. I can't consider him as a core play, but I think that it's fine to get tournament exposure to Matthew Wolff because he's $10,200. He has upside as he showed at the US Open. So I'm down to get some. I just don't want much more than that. And I think that there's a chance that Matthew Wolff winds up being popular for this week just because his odds are so short. Past winner here, did do well at that major. So I would say that there is some risk involved there. And there are some good pivots. Cameron Davis is 10-1. We'll talk about Emiliano Grillo and Keegan Bradley later on. All those guys right around Wolff from a salary perspective. And I think that they're pivots. So I wouldn't mind getting some Wolff this week, but my hope would be that I'm underweight on him relative to the field just because I think he'll be popular and there are a lot of reasons for concern lingering here for Wolff. Another guy with good course form but questionable current form is Charles Howell III. He has played here both years thus far, finished 3rd last year, finished 23rd the year before that, and he did it in different ways. Back in 2019, Howell was well-rounded. He gained at least 1.4 strokes off the tee, on approach, and around the green, whereas last year he gained at least 4 off the tee and on the greens. The putting part makes sense because Howell is a very good putter, but the form is not good right now. Howell gained 0.2 strokes in the approach at the John Deere Classic, so very minorly positive, but that was his first plus mark of any kind since March 14th. So Howell, $8,400, could stand out due to course history, but I am okay missing out on him here just because of the current form is lackluster enough to push me away, even as a value play. Finally, Emiliano Grillo was here just last year, but it was a good year. He finished 3rd in that one, gained 8.4 strokes tee to green, and actually gained 1.8 on the greens. Important. And that was really the start of the turnaround for Grillo. He had missed 5 of his previous 7 cuts and 8 of his previous 11. The missed cuts have started to creep back here for Grillo. He missed it 3 straight weeks before last week, but then came back with a 12th place finish at the Open Championship. Grillo's very risky, but with short game hopefully mattering a bit less this week, I am pretty open to him at $9,900. And I think that if we're looking at, that tier between Wolff and Grillo, I'd rather go Grillo even though he's risky too, just because I don't think he'll be as popular as Wolf in that same range. Let's move now to the current form section and talk about, I think, the headliner for this week, and that is Dustin Johnson. I think this is a good spot to do a deep dive on what DJ is doing right now. He is massive favorite here. He's plus 7,500, but if you want to use him, you got to pay the piper because he's 12-2, and nobody else is higher than $11,600. Things have been a bit better for DJ recently. He is coming off an 8th place finish at the Open Championship. He has finished top 25 in 4 straight events, but hasn't had a top 5 in that stretch. And a lot of the gains for DJ in that time have come via putting. If you look over the past 6 months, he does rank second in true strokes gained over at Data Golf behind Louis Westhazen, but he's in a tier with Tony Finau, Patrick Reed, and Cameron Tringali. Over the past year, DJ does separate a bit from the pack. So I think that the way I'm viewing DJ here is I'm not off him. Definitely not off him. But his form does prevent this from being a situation where you just shovel in as much as you can handle. A lot of times where we have a guy who has much shorter betting odds in the field, I will go overweight. I will go 60 to 70% and just load up there. I don't think that's where I'll be with DJ this week. I think that the salary combined with motivation, combined with form, combined with the fact this is not like a super difficult course, all of the things to me combined to make it where I think DJ is a fine play, but if I wind up being underweight, that's fine. If he's 40%, I think he'll probably be about 30% for this week. So still plenty of DJ, but I would not be shocked if I wind up being underweight on him, given the factors that complicate his outlook for this week. 2 other guys with noteworthy form right now are Hank Lebioda and Luke List. Lebioda is $9,700. He enters here with 3 straight top 10 finishes, and he's doing it with good approach play and good putting. Hank has gained multiple strokes in approach for the past 6 events. That's awesome. He's gained at least 4 twice in that time, and the putting has been red hot. So that's good. Good putting is good. It does mean that he's probably some regression, but hey, I mean, I'm not going to turn down good putting. The one issue with Lebioda has been the off the tee play. He has been slightly negative in 3 straight, but he definitely grades up better in events that favor good drives gained. He ranks 28th there the past 50 rounds per Fantasy National, as opposed to 67th in distance. So I'm open to it. I think that Lebioda is interesting. He's $9,700. Good range in there with Grillo and talked about Bradley before too, Cam Davis. But I think that Lebioda is part of why that range is good, at least in my eyes. List is the other guy I mentioned. He's $8,900. He has back-to-back top 5s. Both came in lesser tournaments, but hey, this is kind of, in that range too. He was 5th at the Barbasol, 4th at the John Deere Classic. So good finishes for List, and he did it in good ways. He gained double-digit strokes tee to green in both of those events. List at the Barbasol finished 5th despite losing 2.3 strokes putting, typical Luke List fashion. And it makes sense because over the past 50 rounds, List ranks 14th in birdies or better gained, despite being a horrific putter. So I don't want to target Luke List because of the good finishes. Those are whatever. Finishes are what they are. But I think he deserves to be a consideration at $8,900. The ball striking should be very good this week, despite the fact it's not a distance course. He's still good in terms of good drives gained, ranks 46th there, 18th in approach, 14th in birdies or better gained. I think there is enough here to make us be okay with Luke List this week, even disregarding the finishes. The other data to me says List is a consideration as a value play for this week. Let's take a look at what the bookmakers are saying here. As alluded to, Dustin Johnson, the heavy favorite at FanDuel Sportsbook. He is plus 750. Then we have a tier of 3 guys behind him. It's Louis Westhazen, Tony Finau, and Patrick Reed. Westhazen is 15-1. Finau is 16-1. Reed is 19-1. Then there is a second tier drop down to Matthew Wolff at 30-1. That's part of why I think he'll be popular this week, is the odds are pretty short. Bubba Watson, Cameron Tringali, Sergio Garcia, and Robert McIntyre are all in that tier too. They are all 31-1. The 4th tier is Emiliano Grillo at 35-1 and Cameron Davis at 36-1. So I think the tiers from an odds perspective are pretty key for this week. To me, I want to have one out of the top 4 guys in each lineup. That is DJ, Westhazen, Finau, and Reed. I want one of those 4 guys because the win equity those 4 guys combined carry is too much for me to skip that tier entirely. And that second tier is pretty juicy. I likely want at least one from that tier as well. I have my favorites from each tier. And we'll talk about those in the tier by tier breakdown. But I think the overall key here is I think he can get in 3 golfers whose odds are shorter than 40-1 this week. The cutoff there is Grillo and Davis at around 40-1. I guess I'd put Keegan in that range too. But if you can get 3 guys at $9,900 or higher, I think you should do so for this week. Hinckley Biota, I think, is a consideration for that tier as well. But that does push me a bit towards, a bit more balanced approach, maybe going with a Finau at 11.5, followed by Tringali at 10.9, and then getting Bradley, Grillo, one of those guys, or Davis. And I think that could work out pretty well for this week. So I think that's the way I want to play things. It's getting 3 guys with win odds at roughly 40-1 or shorter to make sure I have the proper amount of win equity for this event. As far as movement, we haven't seen too many guys shorten thus far. One exception is Chris Kirk. He moved from 75-1 to 70-1. Brendan Todd also shortened to 70. He was previously 80-1. Kyle Stanley shortened to 75-1 from 85. And Steve Stricker shortened 295 from 110-1. We'll talk about Chris Kirk in the tier-by-tier breakdown because I think he is an awesome play for this week. As far as golfers whose salaries are lower than you would expect based on their odds, there is a big group in the lower 9,000 and upper 8,000 range. We got Doug Gim. He is $9,100, but 48-1. Like him a lot. We'll talk about him later. Patton Kizzire and Ryan Moore are both 50-1. Kizzire's $9,200. Moore is $8,800. Stuart Sink and Luke List are both 95-1. Sink is $9,100, while List is $8,900. And all those guys are good approach players. So it makes sense they would grade out pretty well. And I think that I can't push back too hard on any of them. Among them, Kizzire is the one guy who has good putting numbers on bent grass as well. So Kizzire is not in my player picks for this week, but I do think that Kizzire is firmly in consideration. I prefer Gim, but Kizzire right up there for me as a guy I am okay targeting in that lower 9,000 range. Weather for this week seems a tiny bit windy. It's not bad. It's around 10 miles per hour the entire weekend. The wind patterns are the same both Thursday and Friday, meaning that it's a bit lower in the morning, bit higher in the afternoon, which means both waves should be pretty equal. So to me, no real wave advantages, nothing too concerning here, which means we can play things straight up and transition into our tier-by-tier breakdown. Let's start things off here with the high salary plays based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com. As mentioned, I am okay with DJ this week, and I will use him. But I wouldn't be shocked if I wound up being underweight. Instead, I'm pretty into both Louis Westhuizen and Tony Finau. Westhuizen is 11-6. He just keeps feasting against tougher fields, and this is not a tougher field. We mentioned before that Westhuizen leads the field in true strokes gained over the past 6 months. He actually has an edge of 0.48 strokes per round above DJ. So basically half a stroke per round. I think 11-6 is more than fair here for Westhuizen. Obviously, motivation, given he was in contention this past week, that's a concern. But just straight up, I think that Westhuizen makes a lot of sense at 11-6. As for Finau, 11-5, he's right behind Westhuizen. He is known for his length, but Finau, not terrible from a good drive perspective, ranks 60th there, not erratic when he needs to be. He ranks 15th in approach, 6th in birdies or better gained. Bent grass is also the best putting surface for Finau. He shook off the 2 missed cuts heading into the Open, played well there, so I think it makes sense to go back to Finau here at 11-5. I would not be shocked if I wind up having more Westhuizen or Finau than DJ, just because I like the salaries that they have, but I think all 3 of those guys definitely stand out here. And I didn't mention Patrick Reed, but I think that he's actually a pretty interesting win bet at 19-1. And good putter, the best putter at bent grass of this group. He makes birdies, good approach player. So I want to have exposure to all 4 of those guys. And I do want to get there for sure. I'd probably rank Reed 4th, but I think from a win bet perspective, he might be my favorite, which is kind of weird. He has longest odds, but either way, all 4 guys are golfers to whom I want exposure. Would rank them Westhuizen, Finau, DJ, and then Reed from a DFS perspective for this week. Cameron Tringali is another guy I like here. He is 10-9. So in that third tier we discussed from an odds perspective and also from a salary perspective. And I think that the balanced approach of getting Westhuizen or Finau and then getting Tringali as your number 2 is pretty enticing this week. That allows you to pepper that high 9,000, low 10,000 range, which I do like for this week. Tringali is not good off the tee, but he keeps up just putting up competitive numbers despite that. The best split is good drives gained from a driving perspective for Tringali. He ranks 45th there compared to 60th in distance gained, 49th in fairways gained. He's a good driver. He can be fine, I guess I should say. Not good. He can be fine. We know the approach play will be there. Tringali ranks 6th in approach over the past 50 rounds. That's why he ranks 5th in birdies or better gained over the past 50 rounds, despite the bad driver. He's also 25th in bent grass putting. Tringali finished 3rd here last year, so I am down to repeat on Tringali here at 10-9. Think he makes a lot of sense. And again, I think that the build of one of Finau or Westhuizen with Tringali for some balance will be an attractive one. Part of the reason I want to do that is because I love the mid-range. So let's move now there. It's a good range. My favorite guy here is Emiliano Grillo. Talked about the struggles, the recent struggles earlier, but I trust the longer sample more than that, and Grillo ranks 6th in true strokes gained over the past 6 months. That includes his bad short gain numbers, which may matter a bit less this week. They include his splits on non-bent grass surfaces. Bent grass is one palatable putting surface, I would say. So I'll bet on that upside, which Grillo has shown at times semi-recently. And he showed it at this course for the 3rd place finish last year. So Grillo, among those guys, is my favorite option. I'd put Keegan Bradley on this list here too. He is similar to Grillo where we know the imperfections. They're pretty obvious, but Bradley still ranks 23rd in birdies or better gained despite the bad putting. He leads this field in both approach and good drives gained. They're both $9,900. I like them. I like Hank Lee Biota at $9,700. And then also I'd lump in Cameron Davis in this tier. Davis ranks 8th in birdies or better gained. Good approach play. 23rd in bent grass putting. So I am in on him, but I rank him below Grillo and Bradley just because I think the approach play for both those guys will be really, really good for this week. On the bottom end of the mid-range, I like Doug Ghim at $9,100. He is not a big birdie maker, ranks just 51st there the past 50 rounds, but a lot of that is likely due to distance. Ghim ranks 97th in distance gained, but 6th in good drives gained. He has the approach numbers we want. He ranks 4th there. He finished 18th on this course last year before he had this little mini surge he's had recently. So for $9,100, I am okay with the imperfections Ghim comes with. Not a great putter, but I think that from a floor perspective, Ghim works, but also don't mind his upside here. So Doug Ghim, my favorite guy in the low 9,000 range. And as mentioned before, I do like Patton Kizzire as well. As far as the value goes, Lonto Griffin, very similar to Doug Ghim. Not a big birdie guy, but the hope is that it's due to his off-the-tee play. Griffin ranks 17th in approach and 32nd in bent grass putting. Really fun combination. That combination might be enough for him to do well this week. I like Griffin here at $9,000. Chris Kirk is $8,700. Mentioned before that his odds have been shortening. He's another guy despite some rough putting. He ranks 100th in bent grass putting, but he is 14th in good drives gains, 21st in approach, coming off a missed cut, but that was at the Open Championship. So a tough field there, less tough here. Kirk ranks 9th in Data Golf's true strokes gains, but it's $8,700. I think he's a rock star. So Chris Kirk, to me, someone I am very good with for this week in the value range. The final guy I'd mentioned down here is Johnny Vegas. He is $8,300, makes birdies. He ranks 13th there the past 50 rounds. And that's despite being a bad putter. I know, shocker. A lot of bad putters here between Grillo, Bradley, Kirk, and now Vegas. Vegas is not bad in terms of good drives gains, but you can put it on the fairway when he needs to or scramble after that. Approach play has been especially good recently for Vegas, which is part of why the good drives gain number is good. And Vegas has converted that into upside when he's faced lesser fields. I consider that to be that this week. So if you use Vegas at $8,300, you can really load up on the studs. So to me, I think Vegas at $8,300, not as good as Kirk at $87, but still someone I am willing to use for this week. Okay, before Brandon left for his vacation, he did send along some win picks, and unfortunately picked some pretty good ones. I wish he hadn't, because I'd like to beat him, but he is going with Tony Finau at 16-1 and Cameron Tringali at 31-1. I think both those are good picks, and I would have considered them had Brandon not gone there. With those guys off the board, I think the guys I like most are Patrick Reed at 19-1. Again, final guy before that tier drop off. Good birdie maker, good bent grass putter. Did miss a cut last week, but honestly, who cares? So I think Reed at 19-1, pretty good win bet for this week. The other guy I like is Hankley Biota at 47-1. He's more Brandon's guy, but just really good balance. 28th in good drives gained, 20th in approach, 29th in birdies or better gained, 37th in bent grass putting. No real holes in terms of the stats I'm looking at this week. Awesome finishes recently. He's been here each of the past 2 years with top 35 finishes both times. So Hankley Biota and Patrick Reed, my win picks, and Brandon going with Tony Finau and Cameron Tringali. Brandon will be with us next week here on the PGA Heat Checks. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed to get that. But that is all that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. Getting you set for the 3M Open. Should be a lot of fun. We'll see how things play out. And again, I think the key is decide how you want to handle DJ and then go from there. But overall, given that there are palatable golfers in each salary tier, I think we should have multiple ways to play things for this week, which to me is always reassuring. Once again, make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you find your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, radio.com. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. Hit subscribe there, but also leave a rating and review if you like what you hear. If you have questions for me before, or I guess overall, before lock on Thursday, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for this week. Good luck to you with your lineups for the 3M Open. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.